Have you ever had anybody tell you that you sound like a broken record? That may not be such a bad thing. Ashrita Furman, he's 62 years old. He is the world record holder for breaking the most records. So he's the record-breaking record breaker. Not records in the fact of like a record album being broken. Records like world records, Guinness World Record. He holds the Guinness World Record for breaking the most records. Now, at one time, I think he had broken 522 records. He's from Brooklyn, New York. But I think now he currently holds about 200 world records, something like that. And it's the most bizarre things, like riding bicycle underwater for the longest distance, doing the longest run with a milk bottle balanced on his head. It's that kind of stuff. You know, he's done just these bizarre things that he does where he's a record breaker and he's broken the most records. We live in a world where things tear up, where things break down, where things come apart. And part of that in my life, and this is a very heart-wrenching thing to talk about, was my record collection. I had a record collection that would rival anyone. And I have spent the better part of about the past 3, maybe 4 years trying to rebuild my record collection. I love records. I like the way they sound. I like the fact that you can, I'm holding this one, by the way. This is a record given to me by my friend Jamie Rowe. It's an old Tempest record. I like the fact that when you hold a record in your hand, you've got something, you know? It's different. I mean, when you hold a record in your hand, I mean, it's I don't know, it's just, it just brings back a lot. And the thing that I think is really cool about records is that you can pull out the inserts. You can read the lyrics in a big enough font that you can actually see it. And you can read about the bands. You know, you can really just kind of have a piece of the band in your hand. I love that. And if you'll notice behind me, I have several records. California Metal, one of the most influential Christian metal records ever. It's one of the very first. It's one of the ones that blew onto the scene, that just blew the minds of Christian bookstore owners and parents and youth pastors and pastors. No one knew what to do with this new thing. And I got several up here. I have Triumph over here, Rage of Angels here. But this brutal world that we live in, over the course of moving and the elements, lost a lot of my records. Speaking of this brutal world, we're going to let Brutal Planet by Alice Cooper be our old school ditty of the week. Brutal Planet, Alice Cooper. That's one of the best records ever, and I actually have it. I don't know why I don't have it in front of me to hold it up, but this record, it's so good. And it describes the world that we live in and the brutality of the world that we are part of, the brutal planet that we're all born into. Brutal Planet, excellent record. Thank you, Alice Cooper. You rock. Brutal Planet, love it. Saint, over here, yeah. Just love records. I read some posts this past week that got me thinking about brokenness. And I want to talk with you just for a few minutes about it. I'm not going to take up a whole lot of your time, but I want you to stop and think about brokenness in a new way. There's a passage of scripture that we find in the 22nd chapter of the book of Luke, starting with verse 54, where Peter denies Jesus. Now, we've all heard the story. Jesus is being led to be crucified, and they see Peter standing over here, and they hear his accent. They know that they recognize him as one who was with King Jesus. And so they go over and they begin to approach him, and it's got him a little afraid, because he's being recognized as a follower of this man who's being killed right now. And he begins to deny Jesus. He denies him 3 times, just like Jesus said that he would. And he said, "You're going to deny me 3 times before you hear the rooster crow." It says, after an interval of about an hour, still another insisted, saying, Certainly, this man was also with him, and he too is a Galilean. But Peter said, man, I do not know what you're talking about. And immediately as he said it, while he was still speaking, the rooster crowed, and the Lord turned and looked at Peter. Jesus is being led to slaughter. Jesus is being taken up the mountain to be crucified. And he denies Jesus just in time for Jesus to turn around and look at him and make eye contact. It's hard to have a worse feeling inside when you're caught talking about someone. There are two people that I know. One of them was talking about one of the other ones to someone else, just in time to turn around and find the second one standing there going, "What? That is such a terrible feeling." I've done that, and talking about other people always ends up getting you in trouble. It always ends up getting you in trouble. It's called gossip. Don't do it. Don't do it. So Peter is denying Jesus just in time for Jesus to turn around and make eye contact and look at him. And Peter knows instantly when he hears the rooster crow that Jesus was right. Jesus had said, you're going to deny me 3 times before the rooster crows. By morning, you're going to deny me 3 times. And of course, Peter's like, oh no, I would never do such a thing. When that happened, Peter's heart broke. We know that Peter had a lot of issues, and I share a lot of the issues with Peter. That's one of the reasons I think he rings so true to me. But one thing I can say is that I don't think I can possibly wrap my mind around what it would feel like to see the actual face of Jesus look at me after I had denied him, after he had heard my words. And I say that, but yet I have lived so many days in denial of who Jesus is as my King. I say that, but yet I've let him down so many times and not lived up to the standards that he's given me as a Christian. I say that, and I talk about how it's hard for me to understand what Peter felt when Jesus looked at him, yet I know so many times he's looked at me. There's a story of, and I've heard this preached from the pulpit. I've heard it several times in my 20 years as a minister in the Baptist church. I've never preached it because I never could find it, but I've recently found it to be untrue. I've heard people talk about this, and you might have heard it as well, talking about the shepherd and the lamb. And that passage of scripture in Psalm 23 where he says, your rod and staff comfort me, and how the shepherd will take the rod and break the leg of the lamb who tends to wander off and tends to go away, that he will take that lamb, he'll break his leg, he'll wrap his leg up, and he'll carry that lamb around for up to 3 months or something like that, so that whenever he finally unwraps the leg and puts the lamb down, the lamb stays right by his side. He no longer wanders away. But I have found that to be an incorrect story. If you've heard that preached from the pulpit, and I have, it's not true. If you go and you research this, if you read about this particular story, if you read what shepherds say about the story, they'll tell you that it's just not true. That they will correct that lamb over and over and over, and they'll correct him and correct him and correct him, and they'll hold him by their side until finally he gets the point in the message and he stops wandering off. In my life and in the life of many who are prone to wander, Lord, I feel it. Prone to leave the God that I love. The brokenness that happened to me in my life, that still happens to me in my life, it's not God's fault. It's mine. You know what brokenness he gave me? You know what brokenness, he didn't break my leg to make me follow him. You know what happened? Brokenness that he gave me was whenever I came to him and I got to know him and I got to experience his kingship, his lordship in my life. And then I looked in the mirror and I saw myself for who I am. And he broke my heart. He didn't break my leg. My heart was broken because of who I am and who I've become and the things that I've done and the times that I've let him down. He has healed me. He has mended me. My heart being broken over my sin is a gift from him. but that gift is a gift of healing. It's when I have been healed and touched by him. It's whenever he has revealed himself to me and he has changed me that I see my sin for what it really is. And I realize what true brokenness is. That passage of scripture where Jesus asked Peter, Peter, do you love me? Is a passage of healing. The same amount of times that Peter denied Jesus, Jesus restored Peter. Peter, do you love me? Yes, Lord, I love you. And how many times has Jesus looked at me in my life and thought, Scott, do you love me? Do you love me enough to do what it is that I've put in front of you to do? Do you love me enough? That's the real question. Real brokenness comes from the realization of what Jesus has done for me. This week's metal song of the week is Demon Hunter, Cold Winter Sun. It's a crazy good song. Heavy as it can be. And I love this line. In fact, I don't want to get it wrong, so I printed it off so I will tell you. It says, we give way to sorrow when the self is all we build. And we wake up tomorrow in the blood of who we killed. We realize what God has done. And when we realize what we have done to him, my brokenness comes from the fact that I realize he died on the cross for me. We are the kingdom come undone. That line, we are the kingdom come undone. Until we realize what Jesus has done for us, we'll never understand what it means to have a broken heart over our own sin. I want my life to be a testimony of his healing power. I want my life to be a testimony of his love. So what he does is he takes a broken record and he restores it. I want to show you a couple of things. I love this. My daughter got me this. There's a company that takes unplayable records, broken records, and they turn them into clocks. Look at that. This is an unplayable broken record that now is a clock and it's usable. It can be used in a different way. It's not the same way that it was intended, but yet it's used in a cool, different way. I got another thing that I want to show you, and I just think this thing is awesome. Check this out. You see this? This is a bracelet that a friend of mine gave me for my birthday, and I just think this is so cool. But I want you to look at what it is. It is a record. This is an old Bad Company record on Swan Songs record. The label is still in the middle. It still has the hole in the middle of it that the pin goes through when you put the record on it. It is a record. And they've turned it into a bracelet. It turned it into something beautiful. This is called the broken record. I'll put a link down here where you can find out what it is, because I want you to be able to check it out. It's really cool. And this guy he takes these old records and he makes these beautiful bracelets out of it. I just think it's so metal. I just love it. I think it's great. So, and that's what I want to be for Jesus. I want to be someone who, though I am broken, though I am not perfect, though I have flaws, and though sometimes I repeat things that I shouldn't repeat, I want to be something that Jesus can take and change into something cool. I want Jesus to take my life and make me into something so cool, it's just so rocking. I want him to use me in such a way that it changes the people around me. My brokenness has changed me into a record breaker. The broken record of my life has now become a record breaker for my King. And that's what he wants for me. That's what he wants for you. And that's what we're going to do together. Let's put into practice what happened in the life of Peter whenever he was one who saw Jesus eye to eye in denial. And then Jesus looked back at him and says, "Do you love me?"